G'day everyone. Clocks are one of the primary tools that we use for measuring and telling time, but they're kind of strange things. Analog clocks, for example, have these two hands, a third if they have a hand to count the seconds. They have the numbers 1 through 12 that tell us what the hour is, but not how many minutes we are into the hour. We just kind of have to know that each number is equal to 5 minutes, and it's all a little strange. I think that when we all learned to tell time, we just kind of looked at all of these systems and just accepted certain things. Like, for example, what time does this clock say now? Well, it's 5 o'clock. The small hand is on the 5, meaning it's 5 something, and the big hand is on the 12, meaning it's o'clock. But why do we call it o'clock? Today, let's find out. Humans have been using different tools to measure the time within a day for millennia. The clock, as we think of it, is only a fairly recent addition to our time-telling toolkit. In ancient civilizations, the sundial was one of the first tools for the telling of time. A sundial being a tool that uses the length and direction of shadows cast by the sun to tell what time of day it was. These appeared throughout the ancient world, from Egypt to Greece to Babylon, from before the 3rd century BC. Sundials were pretty reliable, but not if it were cloudy or if it were nighttime. Other tools were used around this time, such as water clocks, where the time was told by how much water had poured out from a vessel. This required the movement of lots of water and also posed different challenges with accuracy, as the rate at which the water would exit the vessel would often change when less water was in the vessel, so it would slow down throughout the day. Throughout time in different parts of the world, hourglasses, burning candles, and even burning incense sticks, some of which had different scents which would be released as time progressed to indicate what time it was. None of these were exceptionally reliable, not at least by today's standards, but time was thought of a little bit differently back then. Most places around the world adopted 24 hours in a day at some point. The ancient Egyptians were the ones who came up with this system, with a day being split into two parts, night and day. The night had 12 hours and the day had 10, with 1 hour for twilight added at sunrise and sunset, making 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. As Egypt is not on the equator, this meant that the length of hours changed as the seasons did. In many Western cultures, a very similar system was used, where the part of the day that had light was divided into 12 hours. In summer, the hours during the daytime would therefore be longer than in winter. If we try to relate that to contemporary times, we would encounter serious issues, what with our work hours and timetables for trains and things that rely on precise time measurements. But back in pre-industrial times, people weren't as reliant on precise time-telling devices. With the invention of the mechanical clock came a far more accurate way of telling time. In the 13th century, the invention of the verge and foilet escapement device, meaning that using weights and a toothed wheel that rotated, time was able to be measured much more accurately and at all times of the day. It wasn't reliant on sunshine, though by today's standards these weren't particularly accurate and required regular resetting, and a sundial was typically used to do this resetting. While some wealthy folk were able to have their own personal clock in their homes by the 14th century, most of these mechanical clocks were displayed in public places, clock towers. Though interestingly, the idea of a clock tower predates the invention of the mechanical clock by more than a millennia. In ancient Greece, around 100 years BC, the Tower of Winds was built, which contained a water clock, as well as 8 sundials around the octagonal tower. Interesting, but after the invention of the mechanical clock, most people used clocks in public spaces, often assisted by the ringing of bells on the hour to help them tell the time if they couldn't see the face itself. But when the Dutch mathematician, physicist, astronomer and inventor Christian Huygens invented the pendulum clock, things began to get a lot more precise, and pendulum clocks became a common clock for many centuries. But back to the question of this video, why, when the time is on the hour, do we call it o'clock? Well, when mechanical clocks were gaining in popularity, the sundial was still commonly used to tell the time. So you needed to be clear which one you were using. And in many Western countries, it was common that the lengths of the hours changed by the season in accordance to the length of the sun or the shadow on the sundial. But mechanical clocks changed this, as their hours, whilst not quite as accurate as our contemporary clocks, they lost a little bit of time, but their hours were much more consistent in length. So depending on which device you were using, a sundial or a clock, the time you would read could be slightly different. During these times, you would have to specify that it was 5 of the clock and not of one of the other time-telling methods. Without stating which time-telling device you were using, I'm sure there would have been interactions like this. Where have you been? I told you to meet me here at 5. It is 5. No, it's not. It was 15 minutes ago. What are you talking about? It's 5 now. No, it's not. It was 5 of the clock 15 minutes ago. But it's 5 of the sundial now. Oh. But now we're going to miss watching the plague doctor bring out the dead. Oh, bother. I was really looking forward to seeing him come out with his wacky hat. So people used of the clock to specify that they were using a clock to tell the time. It was the 5th hour of the clock. Using of the clock when a new hour was reached stuck around. In the 18th century sometime, when people enjoyed abbreviating things, of the simply became O. Similar actually to when jack-o'-lanterns became their name. Prior to that, they were Jack of the Lantern. Jack being the common name for a man. Jack of the Lantern, jack-o'-lantern. So, of the clock was shortened to o'clock. And that language has stuck through to contemporary times, when we will very rarely use anything that's not a clock, being analog or digital, mechanical or electronic or atomic, to tell the time. I think it's pretty cool that we use a clarifier which was necessary 600 or 700 years ago when talking about time. Now, it's totally unnecessary. Clocks are weird, and the way we use them is also weird, but it's the system we've got. I might talk about the idea of metric time another time, because the current way we tell time kind of feels like how Americans measure everything, with barley grains. But that's for another time. But for the time now, I would like to thank you for spending your time with me in this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something. The way we have tried to measure time is an interesting history to look into. Let me know if you'd like me to delve into any other ideas about clocks or time in more detail. I really whizzed through the history of time-telling devices to get to the crux of today's video, but there are lots of interesting things that we could stop and talk about along the way. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. To make sure you don't miss any of my other videos in which I delve into ideas which fill me with a sense of curiosity and wonder, make sure that you are subscribed to That's Pretty Cool. Take care, stay curious, and I will see you next time.